More than 100 years after his death, a scholar in Damascus wrote something that would follow this man for the next 8 centuries. He gave a name to a teaching he claimed this man believed. A phrase that was never once written in the man's own hand. Not in 300 surviving works. Not in a single line. And yet today, if you search his name, that phrase appears everywhere. Repeated, as fact, taught, as if he said it himself. The man was Ibn Arabi. The phrase was Wahdat al-wujud, the unity of existence. And the question we almost never stop to ask is this: if he never used those words, what did he actually say? To understand what happened, we need to understand who gave him that name and why. The accusation did not come from a stranger. It came from a serious scholar named Ibn Taymiyyah, writing roughly a century after Ibn Arabi's death. In his polemics, Ibn Taymiyyah used the phrase Wahdat al-wujud to describe what he believed Ibn Arabi's followers had come to teach. From there, the label spread. Critics repeated it. Later, even some admirers adopted it, using it as shorthand for something they found difficult to summarize any other way. Perhaps this is worth sitting with for a moment. A phrase, created by a critic, a century after the man could no longer explain himself, became the lens through which almost everyone since has read him. Notice what this history does not tell us. It does not tell us what Ibn Arabi himself believed. It only tells us what one determined critic decided his silence meant. So if the label does not come from him, what did Ibn Arabi actually call his own understanding? In his own writings, Ibn Arabi did not reach for a phrase claiming everything is one and the same. He reached for something more difficult to translate and far harder to misuse. He spoke of huwa la huwa, he and not he, meaning this: everything that exists carries a trace of the divine, a dependence so total that nothing could remain in being for even a moment without it. In that sense, everything points to him. It is him, in the sense that it has no source of its own. And yet, in itself, in its form, in its limitation, in its creatureliness, it is not him. It remains other. It remains dependent. It remains, always, the servant, and never the Lord. He, and not he. Held together, without collapsing into either half. In Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyya, Ibn Arabi writes about affirming multiplicity on one level, while affirming unity on another, each in its proper place, neither one erasing the other. This is a very different claim from saying the ocean and the worshipper are divine in the same way. It is closer to saying nothing could exist, for even an instant, without him choosing to sustain it. The Quran itself gestures toward this closeness, without ever collapsing the distinction between creator and creation. Notice what that closeness does not mean. It does not mean his essence, undivided from creation. It means his face, his presence, his nearness, a closeness so complete, it can feel, to a seeking heart, almost like union. But closeness is not identity. He and not he. Some may ask, why does this distinction matter, if the poetry moves the heart either way? Here is why it may matter more than it first seems. If Ibn Arabi truly taught that all things are God, in the same undivided sense, then there would be nothing left to purify. Nothing left to seek, nothing left to earn. The sinner and the saint would already stand in the same place. But this is not the life his own students describe, and it is not the path laid out across his own work. His teaching demands tazkiyah, the purification of the self. It demands basira, an inner insight that must be developed, not assumed. It demands tahqiq, a verification of truth through years of discipline, not a belief adopted casually, because a label sounded beautiful. A true pantheist has no reason to struggle toward God, because in that view, there is nothing left to reach for. Ibn Arabi's entire body of work stands on the opposite premise, that the nearness he describes is real, that it is difficult to attain, and that the journey toward it is, inshallah, the very purpose woven into a human life. Perhaps the accusation against him reveals less about what he believed, and more about how uncomfortable his teaching becomes, once it is reduced to a single, borrowed phrase. So we return to where we began. A critic, writing a century after Ibn Arabi could no longer answer him, gave a name to a teaching that was never his, in those words. What Ibn Arabi actually left behind was harder, and perhaps more honest. Not that everything is God, but that nothing, not one atom, not one breath, could remain in existence for even a single instant without him. He, and not he. Perhaps that was never pantheism at all. Perhaps it was simply what it means to say, with complete sincerity, that there is nothing worthy of worship, except him. If something in these words feels familiar to your own heart, perhaps it is worth sitting with, quietly, before the day pulls you forward again.